Hello students, so we'll be continuing with digestion and absorption. An adult human being has 32 permanent teeth which are of 4 different types: heterodont dentition, namely incisors, canine, premolars and molars. Arrangement of teeth in each half of the upper and lower jaw in the order ICPMM is represented by a dental formula which in human is 2123. Okay, so an adult human being has 32 permanent teeth and these teeth are of different types. That kind of dentition is called the heterodont dentition. All the teeth are not of the same structure, and that type of dentition is called heterodont dentition. And these 4 different types are named as incisors, represented by I, canine C, premolars PM and molars M. So the arrangement of these teeth in the upper and lower jaw in each half of the upper and lower jaw is represented by a dental formula in the order of I, C, P, M, M as 2, 1, 2, 3. 2 incisors, 1 canine, 2 premolars and 3 molars. The hard chewing surface of the teeth made up of enamel helps in the mastication of food. So the surface of teeth is made up of a substance called enamel that helps in it is a very hard substance and it helps in the mastication of food. The tongue is a freely movable muscular organ attached to the floor of the oral cavity by the frenulum. So the tongue is a freely movable muscular organ. This is attached to the floor of the oral cavity by frenulum. The upper surface of the tongue has small projections called papillae, some of which bear taste buds. So the surface of the tongue has small projections called papillae, and these papillae bear the taste buds. Okay, so the upper surface of tongue has small projections called papillae and they bear the taste buds. Okay, so what is mentioned is that a human an adult human being has 32 permanent teeth, and these are of 4 different types, and this type of dentition is called a heterodont dentition, and the 4 different types of teeth are called incisors, canines, premolars and molars. And the arrangement of the different teeth in each half of the upper and lower jaw is represented by a formula, a dental formula in the order of ICPMM, that is incisors, canines, premolars and molars is 2, 1, 2, 3. And the surface of teeth is made up of a hard substance called enamel that helps in the mastication of food. And then coming to the tongue, it is a freely movable muscular organ. This is attached to the floor of the buccal cavity by frenulum, and the surface of the tongue has small projections called a papillae, and inside this papillae are present the taste bud. The oral cavity leads into a short pharynx which serves as a common passage for food and air. So where does the oral cavity leads to? It leads to a short pharynx. This pharynx is a common passage for food and air. The esophagus and trachea or windpipe opens into the pharynx. So the pharynx divides into 2, that is, one is the esophagus and another one is the trachea or windpipe. A cartilaginous flap called the epiglottis prevents the entry of food into the glottis, opening of the windpipe during swallowing. So when we are eating, in order to prevent the entry of food into the glottis is the opening of the windpipe. There is a small flap, a cartilaginous flap called epiglottis is there, that prevents the entry of food from the food into the windpipe. into the opening of the windpipe. The opening of the windpipe is called a glottis, and a small flap called a epiglottis prevents the entry of food into the glottis. The esophagus is a thin, long tube which extends posteriorly, passing through the neck, thorax, and diaphragm, and leads to a J-shaped bag-like structure called a stomach. So the esophagus is a thin, long tube which passes posteriorly through the neck, the thorax, the diaphragm, and it leads to a J-shaped structure called a stomach. Okay. So we'll see if there is anything in the picture. Here you can see pharynx. Pharynx is the common passage for food as well as air, and there is esophagus that leads to a J-shaped structure called stomach. The figures are very important. They'll ask to mark what is the correct order or something like that. Okay. So in that paragraph, the oral cavity, it leads to a pharynx, that is a common passage for food and air, and from the pharynx there are two tubes, that is, one is esophagus and the trachea. Trachea is otherwise called as windpipe. Okay, so a cartilaginous flap called epiglottis prevents the entry of food into the opening of the windpipe called a glottis while we are swallowing. And the esophagus, it is a thin, long tube which extends posteriorly, covering through the neck, thorax, diaphragm, and it leads to a J-shaped bag-like structure called stomach.